Tuesday, and welcome to RelateWell Conversations. Get comfortable so we can talk about relationships. Okay, so when you relate well, you live well, you love well, and you lead well. So, for those of you who are new, Dr. Richard Marks is the founder of RelateWell Institute and the CEO. My name is Miko Page, and I am the Chief Operating Officer for the RelateWell Institute. And our vision is to see empowered transformation for couples, individuals, businesses, and churches, and to equip them with the skills needed to be able to have healthy and mature relationships. Please feel free to leave questions in the chat. We will answer your questions. We'll answer the questions that were submitted anonymously first. And then if we have time, we will incorporate your questions. Also, we want this to be engaging. So as we are teaching and communicating, please engage with us in the chat. Send some high fives, some emojis, question marks. We want to see that you're staying engaged, and we want to know what's going on in your minds as we're sharing. Okay. Now, before I kick off our evening, we always share a quote. So Dr. Marks and I alternate who shares a quote. So I have the quote for this month. And my quote comes from Nelson Mandela. And his quote connects to another quote that's been very impactful to me. So I'm going to share Nelson's quote. And the quote reads, "I never lose. I either win or I learn." Let me tell you something. For someone like me who likes to win, who doesn't like to make mistakes, that quote is significant because it speaks to the fact that you don't fail. Failure insinuates finality. You didn't fail, you learned, especially if you continue to move forward. The quote that reminds me of this quote came from a very successful business person by the name of Myron Golden. And Myron said, "It worked. Even if it didn't work, it worked because it either worked for me or it worked on me." And I thought, exactly. So it really helped me to shift my thinking when it comes to challenges or mistakes that I've made. I'm either getting better or I'm learning. There's no failure. All right. So tonight, our topic is not all foods are the same. But before we delve into that topic, we are going to address some anonymous questions that you submitted. We have 4. Okay. So the first question is there, and this question really points to the content that we're going to share. So Dr. Marks, I'm going to share the question, but we may want to come back after we share the content to answer it. Okay. So the question is there an opposite for each type of food? If so, what would each character trait be? And can a person be all 4 types of foods at once? So
let's wait to the end on that one. You're right.
I kind of figured you'd say that. Okay. All right. Got it. Okay. Second question. According to the Bible, which types of foods should we avoid? Which types are teachable and safe to engage in, and who may be open? And I think that might also be a question we want to address on the back end. Okay. All right.
And the lecture may address it in itself.
Yes. All right. Question 3. Oh, I thought this was good, and there are several aspects of this question that I think is worth delving into. Okay, when I am talking to my husband, he has an infuriating habit of responding with what is in his head rather than what I am saying. It derails communication and usually leads to something negative and often untrue. It's as if he is far more interested in sharing what's in his own thoughts than hearing and listening to me. I can try to redirect, but he pushes ahead with his own agenda, and I don't know how to respond without getting angry.
Is there a question in that? Is this more of a statement?
So I think her question is, how do I deal with my husband who does not listen to my concerns or comments without getting angry?
Well, number one, don't personalize it. This is just him being who he is as he is. What I would do, and this is kind of initial things, rather than complain, say, can I make an observation? Always never give input into someone's life without permission. We don't like when they do it to us.
Right.
That goes back to our fundamentals of humility, respect, and goodwill is
Yes.
disrespecting people. So I go, can I make an observation? And then it was something like that. I noticed that when I'm sharing thoughts with you, your tendency is not to listen to me, but to respond what's going on in your head. Can you help me understand why that exists? Why you do that?
Mhm.
Can you help me understand what it is about you that doesn't want to hear what I have to say? Can you let me know if what I'm saying is of value to you or not?
Mm.
Ask those questions.
Mhm.
And if he says yes, 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 then you can say, then help me understand why you do it.
Mhm.
Help me understand why you do it then. If you're saying it, I say it's a value. If you're saying what I think matters, why do you cut me off? Why do you not hear me out? Why do you insert your thoughts? Because those are listening skills. What
Yes.
most people do is they don't listen. They think they're listening, but they're not listening. Listening is intentional. It's directive. It's focused on what another person's saying. Is James 1:19. What most people do is when someone's talking, they're listening to the voice in their head, formulating their rebuttal,
Mhm.
and they want to and when they get a chance they insert their rebuttal. Well, that's not listening. And the greatest gift you give to any relationship is true listening, and listening to
Mhm.
understand. You don't have to agree, but it's listening to understand. And my mentor Dr. Gordon said to me a long time ago, Rick, the greatest gift you give in any relationship is the gift of listening.
Mhm.
Talking is about you, but you can never learn about your partner unless you're willing to listen.
Mhm. Mhm. I would also say this to this wife: be aware of what's going on in your body. When you feel your central nervous system ramping up and the anger, emotional maturity is able to step into that space and say, you know what, I'm going to remain calm so that I can keep my thinking brain engaged and ask questions to understand what's going on in my partner versus allowing my emotion to overtake me. So regulating your breath is really important. We teach meditative breathing, or what people call box breathing: 4 4 and 4. Inhale for 4, hold it for 4, release it for 4. Get your heart rate under 100 beats per minute so that you don't move into a space where you're responding from emotion, but you can stay engaged, operate in maturity, and ask those questions. Okay. All right. Next question. So I misspoke. We had 5 questions, not 4. Okay. Next question. If I see my spouse as biblically foolish in terms of their behavior that is described in Proverbs, what should I do? Pray about it, call them out. How do I remain respectful around foolishness? Do you want to, will our conversation tonight address that?
Let's address it at the end.
Okay. All right. All right.
I
Last
love the
question.
questions.
I do too. I do too. Okay. Last question. This has multiple parts. It's a little lengthier question, but I think it's important for context to keep it intact. Okay. So it says, I was recently diagnosed with multiple myeloma. I am on short-term disability and am going through treatment at MD Anderson. I'm at peace and doing well, except for the emotional turmoil my husband brings to our relationship. He will stir up strife after a beautiful time of devotion. It pretty much comes out of nowhere like a sudden microburst, and I do not respond well. I react. At times, he disappears for hours. Other times, he immediately apologizes. Recently, my blood work took a negative turn and I have experienced more physical pain. This occurred after his latest tirade, and I believe the emotional stress is detrimental to my health. I don't know how to protect myself from his emotional vortex and stay connected to him as a wife. What can I say or do when he does these things so that I can maintain my emotional and physical well being as well as my joy and peace?
So one of the fundamentals of goodwill is to always assume positive intent. To
Okay.
always assume positive intent. So the first thing my brain says, it may be coming across, he may be coming across in a way that's hurtful, but it may be that he's hurting watching you hurt, and he doesn't know how to deal with that pain.
Mm,
So he's acting out his own pain because the fact that he can come back and apologize says he cares. On some
hmm
level, he cares. And he's attuned to what he's doing. But just as much as you are struggling, he's struggling as well. The person that he loves, he sees hurting and he can't control it. He can't fix it. And
hmm
that's got to be tough for him as well. I would find out if that's where it's coming from.
Okay.
Assume positive intent first. Find out. Help me understand where this is coming from for you. And then deal with it from that point. And
Okay.
that's a simple answer, but that
hmm
one has so many tentacles to it. We couldn't
Yes.
really deal with that one here. But that's what I do. I always move to goodwill, assume positive intent, and ask, hey, I'm wondering if all of this is because you're struggling with what's happening in our family, in our life, and with me.
So what came to my mind was, especially if this behavior is out of context of the relationship in its entirety. Like, is this
Yep,
newer behavior? Okay. Or is this a continuation of behavior that's always been present? So,
yep.
okay. All right. And to if you are on the call or you're listening to this and you submitted that question, if you would like more guidance, please contact our office. Okay. Dr. Marks, I'm going to hand it over. Okay, so we are talking about the fact that not all foods are the same. What does that mean? What are the types of food? What is a food? So I'm going to kick it over to you to begin our teaching topic this evening.
So to make sure I stayed and don't do tangents, folks, I made myself an outline to keep myself in the rails because Miko said you only have X amount of time. I went, yes, ma'am.
Correct.
So I need to obey the boss. Here we go. Why does a lecture like this matter? And I had some thoughts here. The wisdom literature of Scripture, the book of Proverbs, uh, over and over returns us to the theme of foolishness, doesn't it? And and I don't think it's to shame us, but I think it turns to it to make be a mirror for us of how we can be, and how we can come across. So I think that's one reason. And I wrote here, most people read the word fool and assume it means someone's lacking intelligence. Uh, in scripture, fool doesn't mean that. All right. Foolishness is actually a posture of the heart. It's not a measure of the mind. In
Oh.
the scriptural context, it's not that you're unintelligent, i.e., fool, is that you could be intelligent and still be a fool.
Mhm.
We could think immature, those kinds of things, all right? And and here's the thing, which we're going to look at today. The Old Testament doesn't give us one word for fool. The American language does, but it gives different four distinct Hebrew words for the word fool. And that's what we're going to take a look at today, all right? And so and there is a fifth category that broadens it. Maybe we can get to that. So, anyways, so here's what I think the Bible means by foolishness is again, I just said it earlier, that foolishness is not a knowledge problem, folks. It's a character problem. Did you get that? It's not a knowledge problem. It's an issue of character. And I wrote here, Foolishness is a refusal to be shaped by truth, correction, or wisdom. The idea of fool in the scripture, you'll see when we get to the four words, is a person who doesn't want to deal with truth, who's not open to input and correction to become a better individual. And by the way, they think they are wise, but they're not, you see.
Mhm.
And so, and foolishness shows up in the emotional stages of development, be it an emotional infant, emotional child, or emotional adolescent. And of course, in Relate, we talk a lot about the emotional stages of development, right? And so we're not going to cover that here. Now, you can notice behind me, I have our core value system, HREG, which is our core relational posture for all aspects of relationship, humility, respect, empathy, and goodwill. And we believe that foolishness is actually a collapse of HREG. It's a collapse
Mhm.
of humility, it's a collapse of respect, a collapse of empathy, and a collapse of goodwill. Because HREG is love. In other words, love is humble, it is respectful, it is empathic, and it is goodwill. So HREG is just another way of saying love. That's all it is. You see, I wrote here, empathy requires the ability to be corrected. A fool cannot receive it. Thus, they operate from pride. Respect requires honoring others as having value. A fool dismisses anyone who challenges them. Like, I know it all. What you have to say has no value to me. Empathy requires the willingness to enter into another person's experience. A fool doesn't care about your experience. A fool doesn't care how it is for you. They only
Mhm.
care how it is for them and their perspective of things. And goodwill requires sincere care for the well-being of another person. A fool's not interested in that either. They're only interested in their own well-being. Now, Proverbs 19:10 says it this way: "The fear of the Lord is the foundation of wisdom. Knowledge of the Holy One results in good judgment." So, if you're taking notes, here we go. The first Hebrew word that you'll find is the word Nabal, Nabal, which is also a person's name. And if you want a title for this, it's the morally bankrupt fool. Nabal is the morally bankrupt fool. Uh, Nabal, it's not someone who lacks intelligence. Someone, it is someone who is morally deficient, folks. This is the fool of moral deficiency. It's a person who's rejected God and the ethical order that flows from him into society. Here's some verses where you see the word fool, but it's Nabal. Only fools say in their hearts, there is no God. They are corrupt and their actions are evil. Psalm 14:1. 1 Samuel 25:25. You'll see it here. He is just like his name. There is a man in the Old Testament named Nabal. The word Nabal means fool. He is just like his name. His name means fool, and folly goes with him. That's 1 Samuel 25:25. Another one, Proverbs 17:7. Elegant words are not fitting for a fool. That's the word Nabal. Even less are lies fitting for a ruler. So, what are the character profiles of this type of fool, the morally bankrupt fool? Here's some thoughts. One, is Nabal in 1 Samuel 25. His name literally meant fool, and his wife Abigail said it best, folly goes with him. Second character profile, he does not announce his rejection of God at the dinner table. He announces it at the quiet chambers of his own decision making, within his own self. And he treats people as tools. This morally bankrupt form of fool, Nabal, actually treats people as tools. He dismisses needs that inconvenience him. He lives as though he answers to no one. I'm top dog. No one questions me. I know everything, and you don't have the right to question me. Hear the moral failure in that? You don't have the right to correct me, direct
Right.
me, or even give input. Why? It's not because they're ignorant, it's because they're willfully godless. They believe they are the center of the world. It's not narcissism, but it smells like it, doesn't it? And so, through the maturity lens, this is not emotional maturity in itself. It's a deeper character issue. The navel does not need more skills. This person needs a new heart, a heart of humility. primarily. Heart of humility, because humility makes you teachable. People who are not teachable are actually prideful. Humility opens the door for teachability, and teachability, when we're teachable, now we're able to learn, we're able to think, we're able to question our own thinking, we're able to hear people's input. So this form of fool, Nabal, is the morally bankrupt fool. All right. Then we have the word Kesel, Kesil in English. That's the Hebrew word. This is a stubborn, thick-headed fool. I'm going to say that again. This is a stubborn, thick-headed fool. Kesel. Let me tell you what I wrote here. The most common Old Testament word for fool is this word right here. The Kesel, the stubborn, thick-headed fool, has the capacity to learn but refuses. He is dull, they're obstinate, and they're resistant to wisdom. He believes, he may believe in God, I wrote here. He may even attend worship, but correction bounces off of him. Why? Because they're thick-headed. They know it all. Here's some verses where you find the word Kessel. Proverbs 1:22. How long, you simpletons, will you insist on being simple-minded? How long will you mockers relish your mocking? How long will you fools hate knowledge? That's the word Kessel. Here's another one. Proverbs 17:10. A rebuke impresses a person of discernment more than 100 lashes on the back of a fool. I'm gonna read that one again.
Yeah.
A rebuke impresses a person of discernment more than 100 lashes on the back of a fool. Doesn't matter how many times you hit them, lash them. They will never be teachable. They're that stubborn. Like a mule. Proverbs 17:16. Another word for Kessel. It is senseless to pay tuition to educate a fool who has no heart for wisdom. It is senseless to pay tuition to educate a fool who has no heart for wisdom. In the personal growth field, there's a saying that says, when a student is ready, a teacher will appear.
Yes, I love that.
You see, the Kessel, the student's never ready because the student is the teacher and they teach everybody and you can't teach them. And here's another one, Ecclesiastes 10:12. You'll find the word Kessel. The words of the wise bring them favor, but fools are destroyed by their own words. Obstinate, stubborn. Here's some character profile of the Kessel. They hear feedback, they receive correction, they nod along. Like, yep,
Hmm.
mm-hmm. And guess what they do after all that? They go right back to doing what they've always done. They can act like they're listening. They can act like you're right. Then smile and go right back to doing what they've always done. Uh, this is kind of like the person in counseling. I wrote here, it's like the partner who's heard the same concern from a spouse for 15 years, attended counseling, read the books, made promise, and changed nothing. That's Kessel.
Hmm.
That's this foolishness. You can read it, study it, do it, but you never change. Why? You're too opposite, too stubborn. All right. The mature person needs only a word. Maturity needs only a word to change because they're humble in essence. The fool cannot be reached even with extreme consequence, which is that verse earlier with 100 lashes. And remember, this is not a problem of information, folks. This problem is a hardened will. It's a hardened will that refuses to bend. Stubbornness. And so this is like the emotional adolescent who says, you're not going to tell me what to do, and I'm going to do what I want the way that I want. Okay. That's like an emotional adolescent. All right. Next. This is the word pethi, P-E-T-H-I in Hebrew. This is the naive, gullible fool. The word pethi is the naive, gullible fool. Pethi. This is softer in tone than in others. They're kind of soft to be kind. The pethi is not hardened like like the Nabal or the obstinate like the Kessel. They're not hard like Nabal or like a Kessel. They're simply open in all the wrong ways, folks. They're just open in all the wrong ways. They're easily led. They don't think. Hey, look over there. Stick your head in that hole. Oh, okay. And they just go do it.
Mm.
They don't discern. They don't think. They don't reason. This is why many people who are this kind of fool make bad decisions because they're listening to people or doing things someone says and they're harming themselves. This is petty. Here's some verses with this verse, with this word. Proverbs 1:4. Their purpose is to teach people wisdom and discipline to help them understand the insights of the wise. All right. The purpose is to teach people wisdom and discipline to help them understand the insights of the wise. Proverbs 7:7. I saw some naive young men, and one in particular who lacked common sense. This is that fool. This is petty. There's common sense. Proverbs 14:15. Only simpletons, there it is, petty. Only simpletons believe everything they are told. The petty is a person who has no ability to think or reason or doesn't want to think or reason. Could be both. But this is a person who's just told something and they just arbitrarily believe it. They've given up their own brain to listen. I think we see this a lot in the church in the West, where pastors have programmed their churches that you don't question what I teach, and what I teach is the word, and don't question me. And I always told my kids, look, even when I worked on staff in a mega church years ago, I said, look, just because our pastors say it doesn't mean you can't question it. Own your own mind. See, I used to be that guy. I was raised in a home where I was never allowed to think for myself. And if I did, I got in trouble. So because I didn't know how to think for myself, if someone told me something, I just believed it. I know it's a simpleton. And then I got to seminary and I was confronted with who I was, and I realized, wow, I was programmed to not think for myself. And so I just regurgitated what people taught me or what I learned, but I never questioned. What I learned was I had to own my own mind. And once I got my mind, I never gave it up again. You see. And
Amen.
Proverbs 22:3, a prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton can fool. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. I'm sure you know some people who just believe whatever they're taught. You see this in politics. You see this in the church. Uh, you see it by pastors manipulating people from the pulpit, and then they're just doing whatever they're manipulated to do with no thought of what's being done in front of them. Uh, it's all kinds of stuff like that. Um, it's I'll tell you who has a lot of fun with this are hypnosis people.
Yeah.
They love to get these kinds of people because they're easily suggestible. They're easily hypnotized and easily suggestible. You see, and because they've learned as a way of being to just do what they're told. And when you hypnotize them, you can suggest anything. All right, get out of your chair and walk like a chicken. And they're just doing it, and everybody's laughing. You see these kinds of things at the county fairs, right? Um, the character profile of the Pethel, the most reliable type of fool. Do you think it's the most reliable type of fool? Every human being begins life here. It was called childhood. Jump!
Mm.
And you just jumped, believing dad would catch you. Just don't do that when you're on top of the independent life building downtown in Jacksonville. All right. You'd be unwise. All right. And so childhood is in a lot of ways this. It's just, this unconditional trust. But as an adult, you have to be able to question. You have to think on your own. I've even told my kids, just because I teach it doesn't mean it could be right. You have a right to question me. Do it with
Mhm.
goodwill and respect, but
Mhm.
ask questions. Proverbs 7 portrait. A young man, naive and without sense, follows like an ox going to the slaughter. He does not plan to destroy himself. He simply has not developed the internal compass to read the road yet. So he just follows along the crowd. This is that fool. This is that simpleton. Now the neat thing about these people are they're actually very likable. They're really likable people. But when you step back and watch them, you think, wow, they get themselves into a lot of trouble. They just do what people tell them. And you try and educate them, and you might want to think that through. No, no, I just trust them. No, 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 I just believe in them. Well, that's what cults really love. They love these kinds of people. Why? You don't question the cult leader. You just do what they say and believe it. That's why these make good cult members. All right. And so if you look at this through the maturity lens, maturity is not cynicism or suspicion. It is not treating everyone as a threat. It is developing the discernment to think carefully before you act, where the plethy doesn't think before they act. They just act. Maturity is you think and you ponder. I like the biblical word for let us reason together.
Together.
Reason
Yes.
it out. We gonna say something, Mika?
No, I was just agreeing with you.
Okay. So here's the teaching point on this one. You don't get extra points for doing life alone, folks. All right. Maturity is not independence, knowing when to lean in and seek wise counsel. Plenty fools need to realize you need to ask people to give you input. You need to let people speak into you. When someone says you might not want to do that, you might want to consider listening to them. That's maturity. All right. And so that is the word plethy. All right, let me get to the next one. This is the word let's, Letz, the Hebrew word let's. This is the arrogant, mocking fool. This is the arrogant, mocking fool. It's the word let's, Letz. The word let's is often translated not just fool, but often as mocker or scoffer. You see it also translated that way. Um, and this one, this fool, Letz, let's, the mocker,
Mhm.
scoffer fool, is actually is socially the most dangerous of all of them. They're the most dangerous of all of them. The let's does not merely ignore wisdom, they actively ridicule it.
Wow.
They use contempt and condescension as a weapon. And they turn correction into a joke and the person offering correction as a target. You do not mess with these people, they will get you back.
Mm.
All right. So then, passages where you see this word, Proverbs 1:22. How long will you mockers relish your mocking? The word let's. How long will you mockers relish, enjoy, bask in your mocking? Proverbs 9:7-8. Anyone who rebukes a mocker will get an insult in return. See that?
Mm.
You go up and rebuke someone who's a let's, they're gonna attack you, you're gonna get something back. Anyone who corrects the wicked will get hurt. So what does scripture say? Don't bother correcting mockers. They will only hate you. I find it interesting. What is it about people who want to correct people who don't want to be corrected and who aren't open to feedback? This is why the scripture says you don't engage a fool in their folly, because when you do, you lower yourself to the level of the fool. And if you engage a let's, you'll become a let's or you become the Nabal.
Mm.
And then all you are, you're just batting heads with each other and you're both foolish. Wisdom, what is it? I used to think, this is part of my own journey. I used to think if I thought something or felt something, I had to share it. Then I read a passage that says, a fool appears wise. Not that the fool is wise, they appear wise when they keep their mouth shut. I learned in my transformation journey, maturity helps you know when to talk and when not to talk. Another thing I say, think or feel, should be shared. All right. Here's the next one. Proverbs 13:1. A wise child accepts a parent's discipline. A mocker refuses to listen to correction. How about Proverbs 21:24? Mockers are proud and haughty. They will act with boundless arrogance. Not just arrogance, boundless arrogance. And lastly, Proverbs 22:10, you'll see the word let's throw out the mocker and fighting goes too. Isn't that great? Get rid of the mocker and all the fights go away. I love that. Quarrels and insults will disappear. Just get rid of the lats.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you don't want to be here? There's the door. We don't want that here. Why? We want peace. We want peace. If you want to be here, you've got to be humble. But if you want to be a mocker, there's the door. It's all right. Scripture says, throughout the mocker and fighting goes too. And quarrels and insults will disappear. That means you come to a house of peace. You see, because the character profile of the Lets, the arrogant mocking fool, is they poison the atmosphere of every room they enter into. They just poison it. And they're unaware that they're poisoning it. Why? Because they're Letses. They're arrogant. See, the thing about arrogance is this. The reason arrogant people don't know they're arrogant is because their arrogance blinds them to their arrogance. Only in humility can you learn that you're arrogant. So arrogant blinds you to the fact that you're arrogant. That's why they don't know they're arrogant. It's that simple. They use contempt as a weapon, often disguised as humor, sarcasm. Because sarcasm, folks, is hostility with a smile.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. And the Letts has mastered it. His pride makes him unteachable, and his contempt actually spreads to other people. And this is why scripture says, throughout the mocker and quarrels disappear. Of all the fools, I wrote here, the Let's is the one scripture warns most directly about. It says you get the greatest warning about. Does that make sense? And so be aware, stay away from these kinds of people. All right. Now, those are the four forms. All right. The four forms. And there is one other version, if you will, and it speaks of foolishness in broader terms, all right, beyond the four words. And let me give you some what I mean by here. This is foolishness that is misplaced trust and wasted potential. So it's not a Hebrew word in particularly, but the word here has to do, this fool is a person who misplaces trust and wastes their own potential. Here we go. Proverbs 3:35. The wise inherit honor, but fools are put to shame. The wise inherit honor, fools are put to shame. Proverbs 12:15. Fools think their own way is right, but the wise listen to others. Proverbs 14:1. A wise woman builds her home, but a foolish woman tears hers down with her own hands. Wasted potential. Proverbs 28:26. Those who trust their own insight are foolish, but anyone who walks in wisdom is safe. And how about Ecclesiastes 7:9? Control your temper, for anger labels you a fool. That's the one thing about angry people is what they don't know is they're revealing their foolishness. They're wasting their potential by living in anger and harming people along the way. And so, you know, scripture also says in Proverbs 26, you should not engage a fool. All right. It says here, Proverbs 26, verse 4, don't answer the foolish arguments of fools, or you will become as foolish as they are. Did you get that? Proverbs 26, 4, don't answer the foolish arguments of fools, or you will become as they are. Now, you want to hear something interesting? Listen to Proverbs 26, verse 5. Be sure to answer the foolish arguments of fools. Wait a minute. Verse 4, don't answer the foolish arguments of fools, or you will become as foolish as they are. The very next verse says, be sure to answer the foolish arguments of fools, or they will become wise in their own estimation. So here's the warning. It's not in choosing which verse is right, which is wrong. The wisdom is in learning which one to do. Do you get that? Sometimes wisdom tells you, don't answer that fool. And sometimes wisdom says, you're not right. And you cannot continue to say that here. Wisdom tells you when to answer and when not to answer. So don't take those as contradictory. It's pointing out that you must use wisdom when to answer and when not to answer. Sometimes when you engage a fool in their foolishness, you lower yourself to the level of fool. All right? It's true. But sometimes wisdom says, no, you need to confront that. And that's when wisdom comes into play. All right? So then, kind of the last thing here as we kind of wrap up and have some conversation now. Why engaging a fool is dangerous? Well, number one, you become what you engage, all right? You can't sustain emotional regulation as long as you are engaging in a fight. All right. And I think another one reason why you got to be careful is if you engage the fool in their folly, you will pull yourself out of your own integrity. Miko's heard me say it much. I've told it to my kids. Don't ever let anyone put you in a position where you give up your own integrity. Always hold to your integrity. Always hold your integrity. Integrity is a consistency, and engaging a fool tempts you to justify your worst behavior by pointing out theirs. All right? And remember, when you engage a fool, you're just reinforcing their folly because fools tend to interpret engagement. Listen, when you engage them, they interpret your engagement as they're right and you're wrong. You're validating them because you're trying to argue with them. And all it does, it just locks them further into their foolishness. But you lower yourself to that level. So there's some thoughts for you. And ultimately, you lose relationship, you lose integrity. It isn't worth it, folks. That's why you always stay wise and stay in your maturity. Stay there. And let wisdom dictate whether you engage a fool or don't engage a fool. All right? So, anyways, three things people often misunderstand, and here they are, and we'll wrap up. Discernment is not avoidance. Did you get that? To step back and discern is not avoidance, because avoidance is reactive and fearful, where discernment is intentional and thoughtful. Sometimes discernment says speak up, and sometimes discernment says don't. That's wisdom in action. People go, oh, you don't speak. You're right, I don't. Listen, folks, this was Jesus. Jesus gets arrested. He's brought before the Pharisees, and he talks to them. And then they sit on the Pilate. He talks to Pilate. Well, Pilate sends him to Herod. He don't talk to Herod. Why? Because if you go back and look at what Herod's doing, Herod's like, oh, I've heard of you. You're doing all these miracles. Do me a miracle. Herod didn't care about Jesus' plight. He's trying to exploit Jesus, to make a mockery of him, to see how magical he really was. He was a fool, and Jesus didn't engage that fool. But he talked to Pilate. Yeah, because Pilate was genuinely concerned. Pilate was not operating out of foolishness. Pilate was operating out of fear. Fear of the crowd, fear of the Pharisees, fear of his reputation with Rome, all of that. Even Pilate said, this guy's done nothing wrong. Pilate was operating out of fear. And Jesus knew that and cared. He had discernment who to talk to and who not to talk to. So then, if you move to HREG, and this is kind of a 1,000-foot view, by living out of HREG, you will learn to, one, not move into the four positions of foolishness. You'll always stay emotionally mature, and you'll know how to deal with immature and foolish people. Okay, Miko.
So there will always be fools in the world. That's not being unkind, it's just being honest. And so every one of us has operated as a fool in our lives at some point. But the question is not whether or not you encounter foolishness. It is that you will encounter foolishness in others or yourself. The question is, what will you do when you do? Okay. Fools create chaos. Mature people create peace. That is not a small thing. peace in your home, peace in your team, your church, your community. It's one of the most powerful voices that exists. I say this, if you operate in a space of peace, when you walk into chaos, peace just showed up because you carry peace. Very powerful. And it's not something that just happens, it's chosen repeatedly by people who do the work within to become mature. Again, HREG is a framework that helps us to be able to do that and to maintain that emotional maturity. One of the things I'll never forget Dr. Mark sharing was how during those years where he was still emotionally immature and emotionally a child, HRIG was the guardrails that helped him to act in a mature way, even though internally he had not developed that muscle yet. Okay. So may we choose to be people who are wise and who operate with respect, humility, empathy, and goodwill by God's grace. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Now, let me jump in because I want to make sure I get this question that came through.
okay.
What is the opposite? All right. The opposite of the morally bankrupt person is a new heart. That person needs to develop character. They need to develop character. The opposite of Kevel, what's the opposite of being stubborn? Be teachable. Be humble. The opposite of plethy is a person who's naive. This is a person who needs to develop their ability to think and reason, to own their own mind. And the scoffer, they need to move to humility and respect. That would be the opposite of each of those.
Okay.
Just
And
my thoughts there, Kent.
listen, check your emails in the next couple of days because I am not only going to send the link to this recording, but I am also going to include cliff notes. Okay, so there'll be some cliff notes. All right. Now, is there a topic that you would like for us to cover or discuss? Please let us know. You can respond to the email confirmations that I've sent you. You can send it to info@relatewellinstitute.com. But we want to make sure that we are talking about the things that are relational topics that are important to you. All right. Also, please help us with Google reviews. I'll include this in the email, but that helps people to find us. So if you find value in the work that we do, please help others to do so. Google reviews is a way to do that. Mark your calendars for our next Relate Well Conversations, which will be June the 2nd. And we're going to be talking about friendships that grow you and the ones that drain you. Okay. So I think that topic covers every generation, age, and stage of life. All right. Please stay connected with us. Follow us on social. We're always posting great relational content that so that you can be the best version of you and have healthy, mature relationships. If there is a need in your relational life, or you know someone you care about that has a relational need personally or in their marriage, we would be honored to serve them. All right. So until next time, you all relate well and love maturely. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.